What's going on, property hustlers? My name is Andrew, and today Skylar and I are going to discuss who makes more money in today's real estate climate, house flippers or wholesalers. All right, Skylar, we have experience obviously in both areas. We do house flipping, we do wholesaling. What's your take on it? What's more profitable? Who makes more money?
To answer the question, who makes more money? Simple, house flipping. There's always, we've seen crazy numbers when we're flipping a house, which is, it's nuts.
Yeah.
However, depending on your personality, you might always be addicted to the easy money. And sometimes the easy money is the better money. And that's why, I think me and you both love wholesaling because it's just easy money.
Well, okay, let me ask you something. Are you saying easy money the same way somebody might say fast money?
Sure. House flipping can be fast too, though, right? But there's no easy money like wholesaling, right? Where you're just meeting somebody, having conversations with them.
Yeah.
And then flipping that off to an end user. That is easy money, right? We're talking about no investments, just my time.
Yeah.
My relationship building skills, my sales skills.
Yes.
That is all that it took to close this deal.
Yeah, well, there are a few things that I think when we talk about, especially when we use the words like easy, is that we take a few things for granted sometimes, I think. Like, honestly, we get some pretty good lead generation for off-market deals in Canada, particularly because of the infrastructure, right? Like, we have property management, we deal with contractors, we deal with investors, and when you just have, like, a very broad and deep network, you will get dibs on some deals that just end up coming your way.
Yes, right? Yes. I would say that we're doing it on a different scale.
Yeah.
And to start off, wholesaling, it still can be easy.
Yes.
It's definitely way easier when you do have a little bit of back end to help us out. But yeah, if you're, the type of personality you want, I would always say, now that I've been in it for a couple of years, you always want to be actively doing both.
Yes. With
the idea of wholesaling your own house flipping deal.
Yes. And I feel like that's a natural progression of things. So here's the thing is that if you look at it from the scope of real estate progression, right? Let's take real estate investing career progression. Like if we turned it into a career path, what would it look like? And it's like the wholesaling aspect is in fact the entry level position of real estate investing. You don't have to be a real estate investor. It's more like ground level. Yeah. And the reason is because you don't need any capital. You need mostly time. Or if you do need any money, it's very little money. We're talking about market material, sales material, like that type of thing, right? And you need a certain degree of like knowledge. It's a certain amount of knowledge in terms of like how these deals work. But let's just say that you have time. Wholesaling is a great position to get into. Yeah. Right. But a lot of wholesalers end up naturally graduating to house flipping. Yeah. And the reason why that happens is because the predominant product that wholesalers will wholesale is, beat up properties to house flippers, right? Yeah. And then house flippers eventually end up graduating to burring properties, and then people who burr properties eventually amass enough capital or equity to do like longer term holds where they might like develop it or something like that, right? So that's the career path for real estate investors. But then in today's climate, there's house flippers and wholesalers. They obviously have their pros and their cons. Like from you said that house flippers you think will make more money. I'm looking at that. I'm thinking yes on an individual project. But what about if you're looking to scale it up?
If you're to scale up wholesaling?
Yeah, versus house flipping.
Yeah, like if you had a team in place with a bunch of closers, it's definitely possible now. But we would also put in the same limelight that if we were to scale up house flipping, where you have a couple of projects on the go, right? So it just comes into more capital, more profits, less capital, less profits. Yeah. Now, that's not to be said that we've seen some crazy wholesale deals where there's just so much skin in the game that the contract's absolutely not. Like the challenge in wholesaling is that you just got to put legwork in. Like the challenge is that you just have to have the attitude to not give up. The thing about cold calling is like you have to know that you will get someone to say yes and it will work. And that's why you just don't give up when you're cold calling. You have to know that I have to put the work in. I have to call 100 people today. I have to call 500 people this week. I have to call 1,000 people by the end of next week for it to work, right? That's the challenge. The challenge is staying on the train. Like if you can stay on the train, I can guarantee you will get a deal. Yeah. If your script stays the same, okay, if we're dialed in, and you've seen our students go from, week 1 to now, which is probably 2 months, night and day. It's sharpening your script. Iron sharpens iron. That's what I say when you're talking to me and I'm talking to you. Iron sharpens iron. And that's a challenge when it comes to wholesaling. The challenge, we could talk challenges about that you need to have money for the deposit. You need to, we can figure that out. Yeah. Right? We can write up a deal where we get around that. That's not hard. right? The challenge is we cannot give up.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about challenge about house flipping, tell me those challenges.
For house flipping?
Yeah.
Oh, man, the challenges are largely revolve around capital. So we're talking just like, let's just talk about Canada, right?
Yeah.
The problem that most people have when it comes to getting into any property is, one, interest rates and down payment. Actually, I should say the other way. Down payment and then interest rates, right? And then if you want to operate this more like a business, and you have to become more and more sophisticated. And I think that's what a lot of people don't like about the real estate market in Canada, is that it almost feels like in order to make things work like a business, you have to start to become really, really sophisticated. You have to raise money. You have to have contracts to protect yourself. There's risk, and there's not a lot of financial options, like financing options, for when you are house flipping, which is why a lot of people go private, right? And then you have the tax regulations that you also have to work around. So there's a lot of resistance to making a buck if you're flipping houses, right? Yeah. It's capital intensive. Like, honestly, if you want to flip a house, you're typically going to need a minimum of around $350,000 to flip a basic house, right? Because you're going to need your down payment. Let's just call it like 20% down payment on a, let's say, $500,000 house. If you're flipping $500,000 house and you want to sell it at $750,000, $800,000, you're going to need like $100,000 down to buy it, $100,000 to $150,000 to renovate it, and then you're going to need like another $50,000 cushion for carrying costs and whatever, plus, your what if money. So let's say $350,000 is what that adds up to. Yeah. It's crazy. That's a lot of money that you have to raise. And you have to do contracts with people. You have to do all kinds of things. So this is like, and then arguably it's like you might say, okay, well, I have a couple $100,000, or I'm able to get that from like my family. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm going to put that in. But now you also have the burden of that money. Yeah. Where now you put that money into something, are you going to make some money? You're going to lose some money. Yeah. Because a lot of things can go sideways when you start renovating. If you start tearing down walls and you find things you didn't expect, things go over budget all the time, right? Yeah. And these are the things that can happen. So like I feel like I really just like tore apart house flipping. But the truth is that once you've got it and you know it, you can make some crazy money flipping houses.
If you know house flipping and you know wholesale, when you're on MLS looking at a deal to flip that house, there's a chance that we were able to get that off market. Yeah. How much more money is in that deal? Oh, yeah. How much more money is that cushion?
Tons more money. And this is where I think the way people look at real estate ends up being a little bit different, because there's a lot of people who will argue, who are more for wholesale, for example, that will say that house flippers don't actually make money on the property by improving the property. They actually make money because of the market carry, right? But it's like, it's true, but it's not really true, because yes, it obviously helps to have a burner plate underneath, a fire that's stimulating the market, that's going to make your project more profitable. Yeah. But really what it is you're creating is turnkey. If you can create a turnkey property, there's a lot of like white glove people out there that want to buy property, don't want to have to do anything. Like, some people deal with problems in their properties. There's a large population that doesn't want to have to deal with that, right? That will pay for convenience, and that convenience has a premium.
Yeah, $500,000 house at 5% down, $20,000 plus closing costs, versus a $300,000 house that needs $200,000 worth of renovation. Yeah. You need down payment for $300,000 plus you need $200,000. It makes sense to buy the house that's already finished.
And in today's economy, not a lot of people have that liquid capital to just do that, right? They want to be able to finance the whole thing. And unlike in the States, Canada doesn't have these BRRRR financing options, right? You have to refinance your whole product, whereas in the States, they have certain financial products where after you renovate it, they will finance your renovation budget ahead of time. They have some construction loans that they talk about. Here is just not as easily accessible as it is in the States. Let's loop it back to wholesale, right? In what case can you see wholesale being more profitable? Like, what kind of spreads do we see wholesalers making in a healthy and an unhealthy market?
Yeah, you want to make average $10K a deal. Yep. Our thing is, you call 1,000 people. There's no excuses why you don't close on the deal. Yeah. But it just comes to the area you're looking in and the filters for that area. Yeah. And you kind of want to hone it down. So, my technique is always whoever, what the last deal I got, I researched that deal, researched the postal code, were they late on taxes, were they not late on taxes? What was unique about that house? What was unique about that person that owned that house? Yeah. And then I try to play with the filters and then search up more houses like that. Yes. And go after that. So I do tweak it a little bit based on my deals. I never like to follow, a concrete strategy all the time. And I do like to switch it because, the market does switch and personality switch. And I do want to follow. Yeah, I just never want to try this same thing over and over again. So I always want to follow my last deal. Yeah. So, if you can get hot. Yeah. You get neighbors, I've had neighbors that what I believe is that my sales skills is not the Jordan Belfort Wolf of Wall Street skills. They're more buddy, friendly.
Yeah.
You want to talk to me, I want to talk to you type of sales skills, where you're telling your neighbor about me. You know, maybe your cousin wants to sell their house, and then it's so seamless that you want to sell your house. And so, you know, those are usually how the hot streaks happen.
Yeah. And actually, here's where I want to take an opportunity to contextualize it for the listeners, right? Like house flipping versus wholesaling. So I want to like illustrate the progression very quickly, right? Which is that if we turned real estate investing into a career path, made it like a job, something you're going to send a corporate ladder, pretty much the roles would look like this. Wholesale is the entry level position, right? You're kind of coming in, you're spending a lot of time, and you're getting like decent payouts when you demonstrate some success. Yeah. Okay. But wholesalers, right? Just doing that. Wholesalers eventually graduate to becoming house flippers.
Yep. You see how much money is left in the deal.
Yeah.
And you want a part of it.
Exactly. Right. So you're just like, okay, I want to be able to get access to some of this spread, and also you become familiar with the product because you get a lot of experience, right? You get a lot of experience, you become familiar with the product, and then you see what type, you understand what needs to be done in house flipping. Because first of all, in order to wholesale a good deal to a house flipper, you kind of have to have an understanding of what the house flippers look.
You need to know what you're selling.
Exactly, right? To some degree, right? And the more you do it, you get to develop a better understanding, and you're able to now tap into that second phase of real estate investing. And from house flipping, you can end up going into burring. And now, here's the thing, is that this is more from a making money perspective. There's a lot of real estate investors that will go straight into just buying a rental property and burring it. But the thing about these guys is that what they're doing is they're like nest egg investors, right? Nest egg investors where they're not playing a make money now thing. Yeah. They're playing a make money when I retire game.
They're not trying to generate income.
Exactly, right? Because you buy a rental property, you're either cash flow neutral or cash flow negative, right? In Canada. So if you're buying something like that and you're going to burr it and you're incurring more debt, that's just the way you are. But if you made money and you're able to buy these properties, then you still have real estate income base. So then you graduate to burring properties. And after you burn enough properties and you get enough equity going on and you're able to leverage that, then you graduate to long-term holds that you may develop, that you may like do something more aggressive with, like MLI Select programs. And we'll talk about that in another podcast. But that's the career path for it. Now, what I feel like is important to illustrate is that wholesaling as an entry-level position means that you don't need a lot of capital. You don't need money, really. Like you need in Canada to be able to have enough to secure the property with a condition in place for you to back out if you're unable to wholesale it. Okay, you need enough money to secure a property. Okay, which can be as low as like $5,000 if you can negotiate it, but typically you're looking at about like 5%. So like sometimes they might ask you for like a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 deposit. So you might say, okay, well, I don't have that kind of money. If you're looking for off-market deals, though, you can find them. But the great thing about Canada is that there's a lot of realtors. Like, there's realtor saturation like crazy. A lot of realtors trying to get business, right? So if you want to become a wholesaler and you do the B2B2C approach, which is you as a business to another businessman, which is the realtor to the client, and you have potential buyers because you're networking, you can potentially make a deal there. But it requires a lot of time networking, a lot of relationship building, trust building, and you also have to understand the product that you are trying to tie down, right? So what I always like to say is that, if you have a natural affinity towards sales, like if you could be a car salesman, right? Like if you could be that type of person, you can make good, fast money wholesaling real estate, right? But wholesalers will look at good house flippers and say, oh man, they made an extra like $50,000, $60,000 on the spread, and I made like maybe $10,000. In the hot market, some of these wholesalers made $40,000, and then the good house flippers would make like $150,000. A good house flipper is not managing their project every day.
No.
So the time that they have to put in as like they're investing money into it, they hire the contractor goes in, does the renovation, they list the property on the market. It's a lot more hands-off, whereas wholesaling, if you're doing yourself, you are going to be a lot more hands-on.
Yeah, constantly playing offense.
Exactly. Reaching out, talking to people, especially if you're trying to reach out in Canada to people who are completely off-market, right? Which we can talk about then in a little bit. Like if you want to start wholesaling in Canada, how do you even start calling homeowners, right? Like where do you get numbers, right? In the States, you can buy the data. How do you do it in Canada, right? And that's another challenge, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So who makes more money? You can make like $10,000, $20,000 spreads wholesaling properties in Canada a little bit more reliably, I think, because you can negotiate better deals. Because what you're really selling as a service to a potential wholesaler or to a potential house flipper is your ability to haggle and negotiate a good deal. right? So if you can negotiate $15,000, $20,000 better than the next guy, you can make that money in your pocket, right? Which, by the way, for anybody listening, always remember that if you're wholesaling in Canada, lenders, big banks, will not finance your assignment fee. So your wholesale spread, if you're making $20,000, whoever's buying that property has to have an extra $20,000 to give you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind. So yeah, so they're making this spread. House flippers will make more money on an individual project. But if you're now operating it as a business, wholesaling is considerably more scalable as a business, because now we're talking about sales tactics, lead generation, marketplace, Facebook you're using for advertising. You're sending out flyers in some cases. You see people putting out those, doing mailing campaigns. You see people putting on the I buy houses cash on like boards or whatever. Like people are doing all kinds of things, right? But that is a lot more scalable than house flipping, because house flipping is a lot more infrastructure in house flipping.
Yeah.
Right?
You want to get to that point and then where you're just choosing what deal you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Cookie cutter.
Yeah. The best house flipper picks what one he wants to do.
Yeah.
Instead of like, hey, I need to make 50 grand. I got to buy this house to make the 50 grand.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck with all those problems that house came with, instead of the cookie cutter, easy, breezy house.
Yeah.
That needs, the hoteling of the painting and cleaning.
Yeah.
And listed on MLS.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. You also want to be at that process where you can close on a property and then relist it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, with all that being said and understood, why don't we talk a little bit about risk of each? Right.
Okay.
What's the risk with your house flipping?
Interest rates double.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Interest rates double is
people are familiar. Yeah.
Contractors quit. You fire contractors.
Yeah.
House getting broken into, not meeting deadlines, carrying costs go over, budget goes over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that.
And these are big financial hits.
And they're not crazy things either. It's not like a tornado came through the city.
No.
Right? These are things that actually happen, and they happen all the time.
For example, if you are borrowing from a private lender and you decided, hey, I'm going to buy, flip, and sell this house in a 6-month term, and you lock in for 6 months.
Yeah.
If that 6 months comes up and you have another renewal fee,
yeah,
that's like what, going to be $10,000-$15,000?
Yeah. And if you're only making 50 grand on a project, that's a big part of your ROI.
That's a 20% hit on your profits.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Plus carrying costs.
Yeah. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to house flipping. And like I said in the beginning, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to wholesaling too.
Yeah.
But stress levels, we've been on both sides of it, right? It's nice to get a nice big fat check when it comes to house flipping.
Yeah.
But also goes with that is the stress levels.
Yeah, but with these big fat checks, like we've seen tons of people also have some bigger losses, right? Like, people will buy a property and then with the interest rates the way they are, they end up taking, their projections end up taking a downturn. Like we saw it all over the place where people would literally buy houses and sell them after renovating them, sell them for what they bought them for.
Yeah, you see it all the time.
So that's $150,000 loss. So, what's a wholesaler's risk?
Yeah, your deposit.
Right. Yeah.
Your deposit, your time.
Yeah.
Your time.
Okay. Actually,
some liability, but yeah, disclaimers need to be put in there. You can put in your disclaimer.
Yeah.
But it's not not often.
There are stupid mistakes I feel that people make who are wholesaling in Canada that end up having to do with liability, where they don't protect themselves or they don't understand the implications. Like for example, there was a case, a recent one, with a wholesaler where what he did was he locked in the property, put a deposit in, and then he did successfully like wholesale it to somebody else, but that other wholesaler other buyer wasn't able to buy the property.
Yeah.
And then it came back to the guy wholesaling it as he basically held up the deal, because I think they held it for like 4 months.
Yeah,
the
assignment clause.
And then the market went down.
Yeah, the assignment clause needs to be strong. And also these negotiations that happen with the lawyer before court is a lot. Because what happens is, and I've been on the sides where if you have a strong lawyer that can argue another lawyer before court, they're going to scare that team from suing. They will.
Yeah, they might,
They will. So like you never want to call a lawyer.
Yeah.
But you also want to know that this guy's in your corner.
I hate calling lawyers. Honestly, because you're essentially hiring somebody that's very expensive to like bicker, right? Because you end up looking at the email threads and they're just bickering back and forth with like legal banter, and they're both just trying to scare each other and beat their chests, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, in this case, by the way, in that story that I just told you, where the wholesaler held up the deal and then the seller tried to sue the wholesaler. Because the new buyer wasn't going to close. the wholesaler's defense was like, yeah, you can sue me, but I don't have a dime to my name. So like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the only reason why they backed off, because like, why are they going to go pay a lawyer to threaten this guy who doesn't have any money? Right.
Yeah.
So
the risk is way lower with the wholesaler. And you know what? Once you get good at it, you're going to get addicted to it.
Yeah.
You're always going to want to passively flip houses.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that you're going to want to do and make that money, especially when you see those cookie cutter houses. But you're constantly going to want to be playing offense.
Yeah, exactly. And the sophistication isn't as high as it is required to be with house flipping. With house flipping, I feel like you're playing with bigger money. You need to know a thing or two.
Yeah.
Right? Because like deviations or
so many people can rip you off.
Yeah.
Mortgage guy can rip you off. Insurance guy can rip you off.
Right.
Contractor can rip you off.
The contractor is going to be like the regular person to rip you off when you're just getting started.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're just going to say, oh yeah, this should be done. This should be done.
Yeah.
Contractors aren't. It's not like contractors are going to be lying. It's just the way that they think is going to be different from the way that the investor thinks. And the contractor.
Never have a contractor tell you what to do. You tell the contractor what you want done.
Yeah, exactly. And just how to make things happen in budget. Like honestly, I have had contractors tell me that what I want to do is against his principles of standard, which I find it to be funny. Like I have a background in construction, and I've met these guys all the time. Some guys, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just they're not the investors, right?
Oh.
So if somebody says, yeah, listen, you can do it that way, I'm not going to do it that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well then I don't need you here.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not going to do it this way. And like, it was something stupid. Like, actually, it doesn't even matter what the problem was. It was something stupid. It was just like, instead of tearing everything down, I'm just
driving all over something silly.
Yeah, no, it wasn't even that. It had to do with a window, right? It was just like, don't take out the whole frame or everything. We're just going to take out the inner part of the windows and then just place the inner parts, right? And just make them stationary. He's just like, that's not the right way to do it. You need to be doing it this way. It's like, it doesn't matter. The money's not there to do it. So do it the way I'm telling you to. Yeah. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it that way. Okay.
Then I can't
right? It's annoying. So you need to know, I feel like, a lot more things when it comes to the house flipping. But the minute you know them, the minute you develop like one crew even that's going to be doing it, you can make a lot of money without having to, operate so much. Whereas with wholesaling, you have to be operating quite a bit. Like you need to be calling a lot. Find a property where like, you know how many property managers are aware of landlords that don't have the capital to inject into their properties.
Knows.
Exactly. So you definitely know a property owner who's just like, they should not be the owner of this property. Somebody else needs to buy this property who can inject some money into it, right? And the minute a landlord is like having a tenant threatening to not pay rent, take them to the LTV and yada, yada, yada. If the property manager tells you as a wholesaler that this is what's happening, maybe he can help to get the landlord out of the situation. You now go in, talk to the tenant and say, hey, listen, maybe we can iron something out. If I can get you maybe a certain amount of money, you can do a cash for keys or something, will you be agreeable to leave at the end of this? And now you can take this property, negotiate with the homeowner and say, listen, like, I'll take this problem off your hand, I'll take the tenant off your hands, and now you go find a buyer who's willing to buy this property vacant and do some renovations, improve it and rent it out, and it's a win-win all around.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of these landlords, honestly, that have these type of properties, you just need to look how long they own the property for so you can see roughly how much equity they have.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want to go to the city and pull title on the property, you can see when the last time they refinanced, as long as it wasn't private or something.
Yeah. These are easy strategies.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do a little bit of digging around, right? It's not easy. People think sometimes that wholesaling is like somebody has a yellow brick road laid out for you, but it actually requires you to be a little bit.
Make the road yourself.
You have to pave your own path. However, there's going to be tons of methods that you can employ. You just have to pick one. And if you don't want to be doing things manually, then you have to be paying for the service, right? You have to be buying expensive lists, and you have to be, developing ways to actually like talk to people. And that's the thing, is that I tell people this all the time: if you want to wholesale, you need to have time.
Yep.
If you don't have time, it becomes very expensive.
Yep.
Right. So how do you want to go about it? And if you don't have time and you want to do it the manual way still, it's going to take you a little bit of a longer time.
I agree.
Right.
I agree.